Now that the absolute links have been added to your page, let's talk about adding some relative links. Those are going to be links within the site, not necessarily going outside to the internet. Actually, absolutely not going out to the internet, but just relative links inside of our directories. Currently, I'm working inside of index.html inside our week 5 folder, and I'm going to be creating a couple of new files, folders, etc., and using existing files within our structure to show you how to add those relative links. And since I've already made this page and I'm thinking about adding another poem that is very much going to use the same structure. We'll be making templates later on in the course, but for now I'm just going to make a copy basically of this page. I'm going to tell it to go and File and Save As, and I'm already inside of week 5, and I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to call it Fire, because the poem that I am bringing in, it's called Fire and Ice. You'll notice that I didn't type the .html since this was already an HTML file that's just inherited, and it brought it back into the fray, and Dreamweaver's already called it fire.html. Inside of my week 5 folder I have my index page and my fire.html. You'll also notice that index.html is still open and it's still here in the page. I can still do whatever, but it's independent of the new file fire.html. I've taken the liberty already of selecting that poem, as I said, Fire and Ice, so I'm going to just copy the text, and I will manually copy in or rather type in the Fire and Ice title, and Robert Frost is already there. I'll keep the same links. I'm going to copy this text from Word, just copy that, go back to Dreamweaver, and I'm going to select the text of the poem itself. I'll press backspace to just get rid of that, tell it edit, and I'm going to do a paste special, and I'll see about just do a text with structure, and just do the basic formatting, or maybe just actually the structure. And then that way I'll get my returns and my paragraphs. This is a much shorter poem, not much to change. So now I have only the title to change. This is called Fire and Ice. So I highlight and just start typing. And I'll click on File and Save. And at this point I could publish it, and I could navigate to it if I just were to type in the exact address. However, remember that if you go to your week 5 or at least your basic index, right now it's only pointing to the index page inside of week 5. So let's make this a little bit more navigable. And by that I mean we're just going to add a link. And let's say that we're working on the first index page, the road not taken, and I wanted to add a link at the very bottom and say also read Fire and Ice by Robert Frost. I'll highlight this and I'll make it italic for now. I'll add that emphasis, and I'll highlight Fire and Ice. I'll see that index and fire.html are inside the same folder, so they're relative to each other. They're in the same folder. If I say I'm going to link Fire and Ice, I can just type in fire.html, press enter. Same thing when I go to Fire. If I want the user to return to the index, I'll just say return to the index, or rather, why not say also read The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Maybe too much information. I'll leave it up to you what you want to your link to read. I'll also make this italic to keep the sign going, and The Road Not Taken will be highlighted, and I'll say just link back to index.html. It knows to go to this index.html and not the root index because we're just giving it the file name. These are files inside the same directory. These are all relative links. That was easy for me to say. Going to save this, file save, and same thing with index, file and save as well. I'm going to upload both of these files, and rather than doing them independently, adding put every single time, I'm going to click on the week 5 folder and right click on that and tell it to just put the whole folder. Same rules apply. Should dependent files be included, just say yes. If it runs into anything that's already there and wasn't changed necessarily, we'll just skip it. At this point I can go into my browser and take a look at my website. This is the road not taken. I'm going to reload this page and see if the changes that I just added are there, and there it is. Also read Fire, and you'll see the link that it reads all my URL. It includes my website /week5/fire.html. If I click on that, I'm not on fire.html. I'll hover on top of index, and then it tells me, it offers me I can go back to index.html. I'll click on that and I am back here. And as easy as that, we've added a couple of relative links, and we're making this poem more interactive. You can make any link not work, or rather just change it by also doing the same thing, highlighting or being anywhere inside of the link, Fire and Ice. If I wanted to go somewhere else, for example, I'll just delete that. Press enter, and that highlights the entire link, and now it's deleted. It's going nowhere. I did that in index.html so that I could also show you that if I were to highlight that, I didn't have to type in anything. I could have simply browsed for my file, click on the little folder, and find my Fire. And it tells me right away that my file name is file, and click OK, and the same result happens. I could have also used the point to file target. This is already pointing there, but if I wanted it to go somewhere else, I could click on that target and drag the arrow to point directly to the file. It didn't change it because it's the same thing. If I wanted it to go from here to the index, then this would happen. And then you'd get these two guys right here, the parent index, and we'll be doing that next. So let me just change this back to Fire. Going to week 5 and Fire, and make sure that I save, just so that I don't lose any of my stuff. File, save. As you may also remember from studying Web Design 1, relative links also apply to files inside the site that are not necessarily in the same folder. So far, we just dealt with a couple of files that are all inside of week 5, so they're not going out very far. But let's say, for example, that you want from your page, this being the index page, to go back to the index at the very beginning of your site. That's the one inside the root folder. I don't know exactly where I want to add currently a return to the index. Maybe I can put it inside of my copyright footer. I can say something to the effect of return, or should I just say home maybe? I'll use a pipe there, and I'll say home. I'll highlight that text, and I'll use the browse for file and make sure that I go outside of week 5 onto my root and find my index. I'll click OK. So now Dreamweaver is doing us here the favor of putting in the parent directory. That's the 2 dots followed by the slash, is saying go up 1 directory structure. We're in week 5. In this file, it's saying go up 1 with those 2 dots, which means outside of week 5, go up 1 level. That's the site root. And then inside of that, open up the index file. That's all that's going on inside those 2 little dots. I'm going to publish that just to make sure that I have it. And although I could just easily copy and paste that home, I'm going to manually go into the Fire page at the very bottom. Once again, click the pipe. The pipe, by the way, is that vertical line that's next to the brackets on your keyboard. It's under my backspace. I'm currently using a PC. I'm going to type in the word home. Going to highlight that, and I can do it either the same way. I could use the target to point to the file, or I could just type in the link /index.html. I'll publish that and save it. Does all that on its own. Click on yes, yes, and then I can go to open up the page at F. Rodriguez, etc. Wait for it to load. Impressive speed, little centro. I'll click on week 5. I've already got this page loaded. At the very bottom I see that I have a new home link that takes me all the way out. Go back to week 5, and I know that I can go from from the index page, from the road not taken to Fire and Ice, and then from there I can also go home to my home page. Now that those links are working okay, something that I can definitely take care of is change the way that these links look. Currently, it's using default values. My visited links look purple. If they were not visited, I think that they would be blue. They're definitely underlined, and we can change all of that in Dreamweaver. To make sure that we're working completely in CSS, I'm going to just use the CSS designer. That being said, I can tell it to add a new selector. Click on plus, just like we added the body before. I'm going to add in the element A. So that's going to be A for link. Every link on the page, at least the default values, we will be setting to be different than what they are right now. I'm going to click on text, which will affect links directly, or our anchors, our A tag. I'm going to first of all change it so that we don't get this blue color. I'd rather it keep its color from before. Currently, I have that information in the body inside the color for the main text for the properties of the paragraph. I'm going to select and copy. I'm pressing Ctrl+C to copy. Going back to A, and then in the text color property for the anchor, for the link, I'll click on Undefine and press Ctrl+V to paste, and that'll set the color. Now my first link, Robert Frost, which is an H1 link, H1 anchor, has changed from its purple already visited color. The road not taken at the bottom, although this is inside a paragraph, because we changed the default A for everyone, now that has taken on that color. Something else that I want to change about all the links is that I don't want them to be underlined, so I'll change the text decoration of the anchor tag to none, and then I have just regular text. Now I still would like for the user to experience that this is a link, and for that I'm going to add some pseudoclasses which will define what's going to happen whenever the user hovers on top of a link. Now we've already have the basic A for everyone, and I'm going to make the pseudoclass across the board for every single link on these pages, at least, to turn the text to white whenever somebody hovers on top. So I need to start with my original anchor, and for that I will right click on the A link and tell it to duplicate. And when I get the duplicate link, that's A, I can click after that so that I have A and then my flashing cursor. I will then on my keyboard press Shift and colon. I'm going to make sure it's a colon and not a semicolon, because otherwise nothing will happen. Whenever you press the colon, then PageMaker knows that you want to add a pseudoclass. And what kind of pseudoclass are you trying to do? Do you want to do something for the visited link, just a regular link, or in our case we want to do something for hover? So I'll click on hover for that and press enter to accept our new values. Now since this is a duplicate of A, it still has the same values. If we go to text, we see that the color is still that dark blue. Our text decoration shows no underlining. If we wanted it to change to an underline whenever the user hovers on top of that, this would be the time to do it. Rather than doing that, though, at least for my page, you can add the text decoration if you like. I'm going to change the color. Instead of having that darker color, I'm going to go back to white. So I'm going to type in the hexadecimal tags for white. I can do either 3 Fs or I can do all 6 Fs, and then I press enter. This being Dreamweaver and it's still in editing mode, I won't be able to see any changes unless I preview in a browser or I switched from design to live view. Once I do that, it takes a little while there, and then now whenever I hover on top of Robert Frost, because it's a link, it changes color to white. I'll go to my home button at the bottom and my road not taken, and same thing happens. So I can switch back to design and safely work under the premise that all of these things will be changing, because they're all depending on the same style sheet. That being said, also, index.html, if you remember, fire.html is a copy of index.html, so they're both dependent on the same thing. And when we've been making those changes to the CSS file, since they are both dependent on it, everything that changed on one page is happening on the other. If I go and change into my new page and then say, instead of the sign, show me the live, if I hover on top of Robert Frost, that also will be having the new CSS change. And if I go to the link below for Fire and Ice, the same thing with home. So you really killing two or multiple birds with one stone, since we are using CSS rules, we're using the CSS designer, and we're using multiple files that are dependent on the same CSS. Now that I have this checked, I'm going to check off the live to design, and I'm going to make sure that my files from week 5 are published in my site, and that when I go and visit them, everything will look pretty much like I want it to look. In the next video, we will be adding an image or two, and then we should be done with our hyperpoem.